was the greatest. And I'm not just saying because he's my brother, he was the greatest.
The first time I ever seen big garlic king prawns in the shells was Laurie ordered it in the restaurant, and I thought, what's that? And he had these king prawns, and I remember saying to him, oh, that looks great, can I try one? And he peeled it.
When Laurie Cunningham died in a car crash in 1989 at just 33 years old, he left behind a legacy that divided football. Some called him a genius, a trailblazer who changed the game forever. But there were plenty of legends who absolutely hated him. From the moment he stepped onto a pitch, Cunningham had a way of making enemies out of the best defenders in the world. His style was different, almost arrogant to some, and that difference sparked conflicts that would define his entire career. Before we dive into the bitter rivalries that made his career so controversial, let's remember what made Cunningham special in the first place. He was 1/3 of the famous 3 degrees at West Bromwich Albion, playing alongside Cyril Regis and Brendan Batson. These 3 black players blazed a trail through English football at a time when racism was everywhere. They faced unimaginable abuse and hostility every single week, but Cunningham stood out even among these pioneers. He had something nobody else had, a background in ballet. Yes, you read that right. Before he became a football legend, he'd turned down an offer from the prestigious Ballet Rambert. That dancing background gave him a style on the pitch that defenders had never seen before. His movements were described as balletic grace, mixed with explosive speed. He could glide past players like he was performing on stage, not battling on a muddy pitch. His career started at Leyton Orient between 1974 and 1977, where fans were already talking about his spine-tingling speed and skill. But it was at West Brom where things really took off, and it's also where the hatred started to build. You see, Cunningham wasn't just good, he was the kind of player who made experienced professionals look absolutely foolish, and nobody forgets that kind of humiliation. One of his earliest victims was the entire Chelsea defence. Picture this: Cunningham picks up the ball near the halfway line on the left wing. Standing in front of him are 4 seasoned defenders: Kenny Swain at right back and 3 central defenders: David Hay, Steve Wicks and the notoriously hard Ron Harris. Harris was known as one of the toughest, most uncompromising players in English football, the kind of defender who'd leave his mark on you, literally. But Cunningham didn't care. Using his dancer's footwork, he accelerated and swayed past them one by one. Each of them challenged, and each of them failed. Harris, the hard man, couldn't lay a finger on him. It was the kind of goal that makes defenders question their entire career, and you can bet they didn't forget it. Now, before we get into the really bitter stuff, let's talk about you for a second. If you're enjoying this deep dive into football's most controversial moments, hit that subscribe button. And here's a question for you. Have you ever seen a player completely embarrass an entire defence like Cunningham did to Chelsea? Drop your favourite moment in the comments below. Let's see if anyone can top that. But the real hatred, the kind that burns deep, came later. By 1978, Cunningham was at the peak of his powers with West Brom. The team was leading the First Division and making waves in Europe with a 2-0 UEFA Cup victory against Valencia. Cunningham's performance against Valencia was so dazzling that it caught the attention of Real Madrid. But before he left for Spain, he had one more English defender to destroy. His name was Stuart Houston, and he played for Manchester United. On the 30th of December 1978, West Brom travelled to Old Trafford to face United. It was freezing cold with snow on the pitch. The 3 degrees, Cunningham, Regis and Batson, faced audible boos and racist abuse from the Manchester United fans. But Cunningham let his feet do the talking. What happened that day was jaw-dropping. He ran Stuart Houston ragged, absolutely ragged. On one particular play that led to a goal, Cunningham let the ball beat Houston before accelerating away again, showing off that perfect combination of pace, grace and control. Houston was desperate. He knew he couldn't keep up. As Cunningham moved down the inside right channel to score, Houston took a wild swipe at his ankles. He connected with nothing but fresh air. Over 45,000 people watched Houston fail completely. That moment, that humiliation in front of a massive Old Trafford crowd must have burned. West Brom won 5-3, and Cunningham's performance convinced Real Madrid that he was comparable to the best footballers in Europe. Houston's nightmare became Cunningham's ticket to Spain. In 1979, Real Madrid paid a club record $950,000 to bring Cunningham to the Bernabeu. He became the first English player to ever join the Spanish Giants. It should have been a dream move, the pinnacle of his career. Instead, it became the source of his deepest conflicts. The hatred he'd sparked in England was nothing compared to what was waiting for him in Madrid. His problems started immediately, on his very first training session. Cunningham did something that would haunt him for his entire time in Spain. He nutmegged Jose Antonio Camacho, a veteran defender and one of the most respected players at the club. For those who don't know, a nutmeg is when you play the ball between someone's legs. It's designed to make defenders look foolish, to embarrass them in front of everyone, and Cunningham did it to Camacho on day one. In training, to a club legend, the act was seen as brazen disrespect toward the established hierarchy. Camacho represented everything traditional about Spanish football, discipline, respect for veterans, and communal values. Cunningham's flashy move was a direct challenge to all of that. It immediately created antipathy in the dressing room. From that moment, Cunningham was marked as an outsider, an arrogant foreigner who didn't respect the club's culture. But the conflict didn't stop with Camacho. Another teammate, veteran player Gregorio Benito, saw an opportunity to take advantage of the isolated young Englishman. Benito sold Cunningham a mansion in the town of Las Matas for what Cunningham later described as a fortune. It was a rip-off, pure and simple. Cunningham later confessed to feeling cheated by his teammate. Think about that for a second. This wasn't an opponent trying to beat him on the pitch. This was someone in his own dressing room, someone who should have had his back, financially exploiting him because he knew Cunningham was alone and vulnerable. It showed just how deep the isolation went. His teammates didn't just dislike him, they were willing to betray his trust for money. The cultural clash went beyond football. Spain in 1979 was still recovering from the Franco dictatorship. National Catholic morality remained strong, and Spanish society was deeply conservative. Cunningham was the complete opposite. He was a trailblazing fashionista and free spirit, associated with the countercultural Movida Madrileña youth movement in Madrid. His personal life drew constant criticism. His relationship with his white partner, Nikki Brown, was interracial, and the fact that they weren't married was explicitly noted and judged by the wives of other Madrid players. In post-Franco Spain, Cunningham's lifestyle was seen as provocative, even offensive. He was young, black, expensive, and refused to conform. That made him a target. On the pitch, things weren't much better. Spanish defenders targeted him with crunching tackles. A player named Bizcocho from Real Betis delivered a tackle so brutal it nearly ended Cunningham's career. His unique style, that balletic grace that made him so hard to tackle cleanly, seemed to frustrate defenders to the point where they'd rather injure him than let him past. His outsider status gave them extra motivation to be aggressive. After all, who would defend the arrogant Englishman who disrespected Camacho and flaunted his lifestyle? Cunningham's manager, George Pecci, back at Leyton Orient, had fined him multiple times for being late to training sessions, but instead of falling in line, Cunningham entered dance competitions to win the money needed to pay those fines. It was classic Cunningham, prioritizing his personal artistic identity over what the institution demanded. That pattern followed him to Madrid, where his refusal to conform made him even more isolated. Despite all the hatred, all the isolation, and all the conflicts, Cunningham still managed to win a league and cup double in his first season at Real Madrid. He proved his quality on the biggest stage in European football, but the cost was enormous. He was exploited, isolated, and targeted both on and off the pitch. His pioneering status as the first Englishman at Real Madrid, combined with being a black player in a conservative society, meant every action was judged harshly. The playful nutmeg, the late arrivals, the unconventional relationship, all of it was used against him. He needed strong support from the club, but instead he found himself alone, surrounded by teammates who resented him and opponents who wanted to hurt him. Looking back, it's clear that Cunningham's career was defined by conflict. From the Chelsea defenders he humiliated at Leyton Orient to Stuart Houston's nightmare at Old Trafford. From Camacho's wounded pride to Benito's betrayal, Cunningham generated intense reactions wherever he went. Some of it was professional, defenders hating him because he made them look incompetent. Some of it was cultural, people who couldn't accept his style, his lifestyle, or his refusal to conform. But all of it came from the same source. Cunningham was different. He brought ballet to football. He brought style to a game that valued toughness. He brought individuality to environments that demanded demanded conformity. The legends who hated Laurie Cunningham weren't bad people. They were products of their time, shaped by traditions and expectations that Cunningham challenged simply by being himself. But here's the thing, while they were busy resenting him, hating him, and trying to stop him, Cunningham was busy changing football forever. He showed that skill could beat strength, that grace could defeat aggression, and that being different wasn't a weakness, it was a superpower. His tragic death in 1989 cut short a career that was already legendary, but the legacy he left behind, the trail he blazed for black players, the barrier he broke at Real Madrid, and the defenders he left grasping at air, that legacy lives on. The legends may have hated him, but they could never stop him. And that's what makes Laurie Cunningham unforgettable.